Welcome to the All-Star Mindset Podcast, your guide to mastering the mental game and unlocking your full potential in business, sport, and life. I was in an airplane with about 9 other people, and we were at 12,000 feet of elevation. And pretty soon, it was going to be my turn to jump. I sat there, slowly watching groups of people ahead of me jump out the open door of an airplane. 6 people left in front of me, 4 people left in front of me, 2 people left in front of me, and now it was my turn. 3, 2, 1, go. I remember very vividly turning skyward as I jumped out of the airplane, and I waved back up at the plane as it quickly got smaller and faded away from me. About 2 minutes later, I was safely back on the ground again, having just completed my first skydiving experience. Now let me back up a minute and I'll tell you the whole story. I was about 21 years old, and up until this point in my life, I had been afraid to do just about anything. I lived in a shell, emotionally, physically, mentally. I was scared to get out of my comfort zone and do anything that was dangerous or challenging or had outcomes that I knew that I couldn't control. And I had reached a point in my life where I was tired of feeling that way. And I was actually in Southern California. This relates to the previous episode of the All-Star Athlete podcast, which is now the All-Star Mindset podcast. If you haven't listened to that episode, I recommend that you go back and check that one out. But I was with some friends that I was playing World of Warcraft with at the time. And they had decided that they wanted to go skydiving at the annual BlizzCon convention in Anaheim, California, and had invited me to go with them. Well, originally I had agreed to go and just sort of be support, emotional support for my friends. And I knew that I wasn't the type of person that was going to go skydiving because there were just way too many things that could possibly go wrong. So why would I do it? But as I sat there in the waiting room while my friends were registering for this adventure, there was actually a song, I remember it very vividly, that came on the TV in the waiting room. And I don't remember exactly what the song was, but I remember being inspired by this song. And this was actually a very pivotal turning point in my life, where I had this realization that I was tired of being afraid. And I was tired of not taking advantage of opportunities to grow and improve myself and get out of my comfort zone. And I sat there and I told myself that this is a perfect opportunity to prove to myself and nobody else that I can do things that are challenging, that are difficult, that are quote unquote dangerous, and I can survive them and I can come out on the other side and I can be okay. So I decided to join my friends in skydiving when I was 21 years old. And this was actually, as I mentioned, a pivotal point in my life where before this, I was very afraid to get out of my comfort zone, which, as we'll talk about in this episode, is where most growth occurs. You see, here's the thing that I didn't understand about myself back then, but that I understand now. And this is actually something that is backed by research. There's something that psychologists call the Anxiety-Avoidance Cycle. And that basically is when you avoid something that scares you, you get instant relief. Your brain goes, oh, good, we're safe. But the relief that you get from avoiding something that scares you is actually a trap. Because every time you avoid something, you're teaching your brain that that thing was actually dangerous and that it needed to be avoided. So your fear of that thing doesn't go away, it actually gets reinforced and made worse. Your fear actually comes back stronger the next time. And that was me. I avoided things that made me uncomfortable because I was afraid of them or because I felt like they were dangerous or in my mind, I had catastrophized and made up this outcome that was very likely not going to happen. And so then by avoiding those things, I basically felt safe and told myself that I made the right decision. But the problem with that decision is that then you never get over your fear of doing that thing. You never have the experience of doing it and then coming out on the other side and having lived tangible experience that says, oh, wait, that thing actually wasn't scary or dangerous. And there weren't catastrophic outcomes that came of it. So what I realized was that every time I said no to something, as in an activity that I didn't want to do because it made me uncomfortable, I was training my brain to be more afraid of doing those things. And I didn't want to keep doing that anymore. And at the time, I kind of had this realization without realizing this anxiety-avoidance cycle was even a thing. This was back when I was 21, back before my mindset coaching, back before my grad school, back before my sports psychology knowledge. But as we're going to learn in this episode of the podcast, as well as in future episodes, there were a lot of things that I learned as a younger man that I carry through to this day and that I use personally and that I teach to my clients that I kind of found out by accident. Or maybe I shouldn't say by accident, because I was very deliberate about engaging in these actions, such as skydiving and many other stories that I'll be sharing in the future. But I didn't know that it was a psychological principle at the time, like I know now. But I can look back and see that I had these experiences and that I learned these things that I still apply to this day. So at this point, I want to encourage you to do things that challenge you. Whether that's one big thing that you've been scared of, starting a business, or it could be skydiving, bungee jumping, whatever it is, going out and socializing. I used to have personally a lot of social anxiety and fear over talking to women. That's a whole story for a different episode, but something that I'll more than happily share with you all. And it's a big part of my journey as well. But if you find yourself avoiding things that are challenging or difficult or that scare you, I'm here to tell you today that you are massively sabotaging your ability to grow and become the best person that you can possibly be. It feels safe and comfortable for you to stay inside of that bubble that you have. And it feels like the right decision when you avoid something that is uncomfortable or you feel like is dangerous, or maybe you just don't know how to do it and you're afraid of being judged by other people. Whatever the case is, it feels like the right decision. But I'm here to tell you that in the grand scheme of things, you are sabotaging your ability to become the best version of yourself that you can be. One thing that I like to say is, if you want to become the best version of yourself that you can be, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And most of you have probably heard the saying, growth exists at the end of your comfort zone. This is philosophically true across all aspects of life. As a personal trainer, physically, for anybody that's been in the gym before, or if you haven't been in the gym, the way that you get stronger, for example, achieve hypertrophy, build muscle, or anything of that nature, you get stronger by lifting weights that your body is just barely able to do, or maybe even not able to do. In the case of pushing yourself to that point that you are significantly uncomfortable with the amount of weight that you're trying to lift or the amount of exertion that you give across the span of a singular workout. Physically and psychologically, your body goes, okay, that was really challenging. Like, we almost couldn't do that, or we actually couldn't do that. Therefore, we must get stronger in order to lift that weight, for example. In the case of business or coaching or sales, if you are unable to do something or haven't done something before, It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that your brain is convincing you that the safer option is to not try, because failure is uncomfortable and rejection is uncomfortable and hearing no is uncomfortable. Being judged by other people is uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, none of that really matters as long as you take those uncomfortable situations, those fears, those rejections, those no's, those I don't know what I'm doings, and try and learn something from it, whether or not you succeed. And then the next time you do it, you're going to be more comfortable. You're going to increase your chances of success. And in the meantime, you're also going to be changing your mentality, literally, which is what we call neuroplasticity, changing your brain's wiring to believe and convince yourself that it is actually doable, and or it's not scary, and or you're not going to get hurt by doing that thing. And one of the things that I want to encourage you to do when it comes to things that are challenging or difficult or that create this anxiety or this uncomfortable feeling in you, which is oftentimes a signal that I have learned means that an opportunity to grow is at hand. So think about that for a second. Every time you feel anxiety or excitement, which, as we'll talk about in a minute, is essentially the same thing. Anytime that you feel anxiety or excitement, doesn't matter what it is, going to talk to someone of the opposite gender that you think is attractive, or going into a boardroom of executives because you're about to pitch them a business idea, or getting on a sales call for the first time, or if you're a real estate agent, for example, showing the biggest potential client that you've ever had a piece of property that is, if you close this deal, it's going to be the biggest deal that you've ever closed, right? These are all examples of things that might make someone anxious, excited, nervous. I want you to recognize that those are the opportunities that are most likely to allow you to grow and improve yourself, because those are things that are very clearly making you uncomfortable. So what I've learned is that rather than shy away from those events, what you want to do is realize that it is super important for you to take action in those moments, because that is a prime opportunity for you to get out of your comfort zone and grow and improve at whatever it is that you're doing. And we don't always have those opportunities. In fact, most things for us throughout the day are kind of boring and mundane. They don't incite anxiety or excitement. We kind of get stuck in habits and routines. And so we don't really learn anything from being comfortable. If we're closing a deal that we've closed a million times before, that doesn't really make us nervous. We're not really getting that much better at doing something. Okay. If we're going to talk to someone that we've talked to a million times before, we're not nervous doing that. But if we're talking to someone new, that might be exciting, anxiety inducing. If we're closing the biggest deal that we've ever closed, if we're talking to the biggest potential client or customer or investor that we've ever talked to before, that's going to make you anxious. So I want you to latch on to that opportunity. And I want you to start framing anxiety and fear as excitement. Okay? Because both of those things are actually just your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight response, activating and getting you ready for action. So all you have to do is reframe anxiety as excitement. And in those moments, you're not going to be as nervous anymore. Now, I know it's easy for me to just stand here and say this, but you have to believe me on this one. I've done it a million times myself, and it's something that I help a lot of my clients with. The next time you're anxious, I want you to view it as excitement. And so this is something that I did back then. We're going to go back to the skydiving story for a second. I want you to picture me in the moments leading up to the jump. I was terrified, right? Because I'd never done this before. Super out of my comfort zone. Never thought that I would be doing something like this before. And here's something that I wish I would have known back then, even though I did make the decision to skydive. I wish I would have known this. So there's a Harvard study that was done by a researcher named Allison Wood Brooks, where she looked at people right before high pressure moments. Public speaking, singing in front of people, taking hard tests, or maybe even something like skydiving. And she found that almost everyone tried to calm themselves down. They actively felt anxious, stressed, highly activated, and they tried to calm themselves down ahead of these high pressure moments, which makes sense that someone might try and do that. They would tell themselves, just relax, breathe, okay? Which, these sorts of things activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite. It's the rest and relax response. So naturally, we as humans kind of want to maintain this homeostasis. So it makes sense that we would want to tell ourselves to relax and breathe and calm down. But what Allison found out is that that's actually not what works best for optimizing your performance. What actually works better is to tell yourself the opposite in moments of excitement and anxiety and high stress, which is to say, tell yourself out loud, I'm excited. Or at the very least, in your head, tell yourself, I'm excited. Because fear and excitement feel almost identical in the body. The racing heart, the adrenaline, the feeling hot around the neck, the sweat starting to occur across your body. The only difference in those situations is what you're telling yourself. You're telling yourself, I'm excited, or you're telling yourself, I'm anxious, or I'm afraid. So the people in this study who actually said to themselves, I'm excited, instead of trying to calm down ahead of the event that they were preparing themselves for, actually performed better. I want to repeat that. The people who didn't try to calm themselves down, they hyped themselves up and said, I'm excited, actually performed better at these difficult, stress-inducing tasks that they were faced with, rather than the people who tried to tell themselves to calm down. And so once again, without knowing this research study, this is something that I learned myself across a variety of different experiences, including the skydiving, where I learned to tell myself that I'm excited. And this sympathetic nervous system activation is just my body getting ready to perform, rather than that I'm afraid of something. So again, I want to encourage you the next time that you're faced with something that's anxiety or stress inducing or a new experience that you've never done before, whatever it is, to reframe your anxiety or your fear as excitement, and not to necessarily tell yourself to calm down, but just to be excited about this new opportunity that you have to grow and improve, and just tell yourself that your body is preparing itself to perform the best that you can. Because the truth is, if you are being faced with a new experience, something that's high pressure, no matter what it is, whether you're in the boardroom, whether you're an athlete out on the field, whether you're in a social situation, your sympathetic nervous system is activating because your body recognizes that it needs to be sharp. You need to have your best wits and your best energy about you. If you were tired, if you were sleepy, if you were bored, chances are you're not going to have your best energy. You're not going to perform your best. Imagine a professional athlete that's, playing in a basketball game and they're super bored and tired and low energy. Do you think they're going to be performing their best? Probably not. Imagine a sales executive going into a boardroom of tech investors, or medical device sales opportunity, and you haven't had your coffee, you didn't get much sleep last night, and you're bored and you're distracted. Do you think you're going to perform your best at that opportunity? Probably not. In fact, I would say definitely not. So it's not wrong and it's not bad that your body is experiencing this physiological stress, but you need to frame it as excitement and not as something that's bad for you. And so over time, when you allow yourself to have these experiences and when you subject yourself to these experiences that are uncomfortable, these experiences that will allow you to grow, your confidence will increase significantly across the board. This is a transferable skill. If you prove to yourself that you can do something difficult in one area, not only will you become better at doing that thing in that area, but your brain will be wired to say, hey, I can do difficult things and it's not bad for me. So when you are faced with a difficult, challenging new opportunity in another area, your brain will say, hey, we can do this. And there's actually research on this as well. There's a psychologist whose name was Albert Bandura, who spent his career studying where real confidence comes from. And he found that there are basically 4 ways that you build a belief in yourself. And those 4 ways are, number 1, people telling you that you're capable. Number 2, watching someone else do the hard thing that you're going to try and do. Number 3, managing how worked up you feel, which is what we just finished talking about. And number 4, and this is the strongest one by far, is what Albert Bandura called a mastery experience. And a mastery experience is very simple. A mastery experience is just doing the hard thing by yourself and coming out on the other side. There is no better way to build confidence in yourself and your ability to do something than to do it yourself and then come out on the other side. That is the ultimate proof that you are able to do whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether it's easy, medium, or difficult, or something maybe even that you thought was impossible up until you do it. And then when you come out on the other side, you actually kind of have this eureka moment, this moment of enlightenment where you sit and you say to yourself, wait a minute, I just did that hard thing. And it's crazy to have that realization. If you've never had it before, I want to encourage you, even if it's just this week, you can plan this out if you want to, if there's something coming up or something that you're considering doing that's challenging or difficult. Maybe it's a presentation, maybe it's a conference you want to register for. Maybe it's a girl or a boy that you want to go talk to. Maybe it's a job that you want to apply for. Maybe you want to approach your manager at your current job and ask for a raise, something like this, something that you thought you would never be able to do, not in a million years, which is fixed mindset, by the way, believing that you can't grow or improve, right? We keep talking about these concepts, growth mindset and fixed mindset. So someone that does these things to improve themselves, believing that you can accomplish hard things, you will solidify and reinforce and build your growth mindset as you undertake these challenging things, right? And that will carry over to other more challenging things, and you'll grow in your belief of this growth mindset that you have. But as Albert Bandura was saying, the number one way to build confidence in yourself is to do a hard thing and then just come out on the other side. There is no greater proof that you have an ability to do something than to do it yourself. And so ultimately, that's what today's story was all about. I started with the story of my experience skydiving and how I didn't think that I was ever going to be a person that skydived. And I was terribly afraid of it. I thought that there would be catastrophic outcomes, and I thought that I would never be able to jump out of an airplane. And I'm actually writing a book about this, so more to come in this on the future, the full story around Justin's skydiving adventure. But this was actually a very pivotal moment in my life where I decided that I was tired of being afraid, of doing difficult, anxiety-inducing things, and I did something about it. And this is something that I help my clients with every day as a mindset coach, because many people, despite any qualifications that they may have, often find themselves afraid of taking that next step, whatever it is. Maybe you've done hard things before in your life, and maybe you haven't. Maybe you believe that you can. Maybe you don't believe that you can. But I'm here to tell you with 100% certainty that you can do hard things. And so if that sounds like something that you could benefit from, I would encourage you to consider doing some one-on-one coaching with my Mindset Mastery coaching program. I'll include a link to that in today's show notes if that's something that you would be considering, or maybe if you haven't been considering it, maybe now is your opportunity to consider enrolling in some one-on-one coaching to improve your performance across all aspects of your life. But at the very least, I encourage you to subscribe to this podcast and share this episode with anyone who you feel might gain some value from listening to these words of wisdom. And maybe drop a comment down below if there's something that really resonated with you, or if you had a question about the research studies or anything at all, really. If there's something that you'd like to hear about in a future episode, or want me to expand upon any personal stories that I've had, things that have shaped me into becoming who I am today, I'd be happy to share any of that information with all of you. But until next time, we'll be signing off here. I want to thank you for taking time out of your no doubt busy day to listen to the All-Star Mindset podcast. I look forward to hearing from you in the next episode. Have a great day, everyone.